if you say that historical evidence doesn't count, then I think you get into huge trouble, because then how do you, then why not just deny the Holocaust? Or why not deny, just deny, I think these things, I think it matters what happened in history.
Right. Well,
in the microphysical world, the laws of logic as we know them do not hold. This is a fact, this is a scientific fact, an observation.
We're just made of cells, about 100 trillion of them. Not a single one of those cells is conscious. Not a single one of those cells knows who you are or cares.
Science shows that the universe is in fact a big confidence trick. There is truly nothing here.
Your model says this world may not even exist.
Yeah?
That's not a consistent model. You don't live your life by that model.
Yeah, I do.
You live as if this world doesn't exist.
It's necessary.
So you live as if this world may not even exist.
Yeah.
Free will is an illusion.
I would say the self is an illusion. I can say, I can raise my hand, and I did it. That's just an illusion.
It's not science, it's a theory of knowledge. This is the philosophy that dominated the 1930s and the 40s, the 1930s and the 40s, the 1930s and the 40s, the 1930s and the 40s.
In the aftermath of World War I, added to the widespread unrest and dissatisfaction. In this atmosphere of despair and discontent, many people gave their support to political groups that promised prosperity at the price of personal liberty. The result, totalitarianism, a form of government based on supremacy of the state over the individual and marked by one-party rule under strong leadership or dictatorship. In Italy, in 1922, the Fascist Party marched on Rome to seize government. Under the dictatorship of Benito Mussolini, the Council set up a totalitarian state. In Germany, in 1933, Adolf Hitler and his Nazis captured the allegiance of the German people. The Nazi Party established a totalitarian regime based on myth of German racial superiority. And the Nazis ranted about Lebensraum, living space. But no matter what they call it, it meant territorial aggression. Military training encouraged feelings of extreme nationalism among the youth of all three countries. Children were taught to give complete allegiance to the state and blind obedience to its leaders. The totalitarian state made addressing war an accepted instrument of national politics. War is to the male what childbearing is to the female, the claims of the English. And Hitler felt it for the good of the German people in the wish for a war every 15 or 20 years. As the Axis powers built up their military strength, the democracies looked on complacently and indifferently.
Free will is an illusion, and that there's no way of thinking about it coherently. This notion of free will doesn't make any more sense. There's no way of combining chance and determinism that makes sense of free will.
Let me turn to the self, because that's what I'm supposed to be talking about. I would say the self is an illusion. Very natural. It seems to be the way that we're built. That we feel as, oh, there's my foot. That's my foot, that's my knee, that's my tummy, and I'm in here looking at them when I look. I'm up here and I'm looking at my foot. And I'm over here and you're out there. That's a kind of natural way that we feel about ourselves. But of course it's rubbish. It helps to kind of throw apart, intellectually throw apart the idea that there's me inside here doing it. And give rise, therefore, to understanding a little bit about what it might mean to say that I am an illusion, or the self is an illusion. It feels this way, but it really isn't. Oh, here I am. Seems to be me, seems to be one me in charge of this body. unified, continuous. It seems to be, well, it doesn't anymore actually, but it used to seem to be that it was me a few minutes ago, and before that it was me and the little girl and so on, that there was something continuous about the me's generated by this brain and this body. It seems to be that there's a me having a stream of experiences. And it seems to be that I have some effect on my body. I can say, I can raise my hand, ha ha ha, and I did it. Now, there's plenty of psychological evidence, fascinating stuff. That's just an illusion. We have thoughts. No, really. I mean, Libet's work is just the start. We have thoughts. They're about an action, say. The action happens. There's a correlation. They're in that order. We jump to the conclusion that one caused the other. But we can tell from what's going on in the brain that it isn't like that at all. Indeed, we know so much now about the mechanisms of self-control, of decision-making, of choices and so on, and where they're happening in frontal cortex, prefrontal cortex, and so on, again distributed and so on, that the idea of there being a me who initiates actions is just bollocks. You're not in there. There's just this stuff, doing something, whatever it is, and we don't even know fundamentally what it is. We know so much now about the mechanisms of, we don't even know fundamentally what it is. We know so much now of, we don't even know fundamentally what it is. We know so much now of, we don't even know fundamentally what it is. We know so much now of, we don't even know fundamentally what it is. I would say the self is an illusion.
Scientism, that's the label that I choose for the views defended in this book. Scientism agrees there's no reason to doubt atheism. What we know about physical and biological science makes the existence of God less probable than the existence of Santa Claus. Not as many are troubled by it as we might like, but almost everyone wants to know the nature of right and wrong, good and evil, why we should be moral, and whether abortion, euthanasia, cloning, or having fun is forbidden, permissible, or sometimes obligatory. Is there a God? No. What is the nature of reality? What physics says it is. What is the purpose of the universe? There is none. What is the meaning of life? Ditto. Why am I here? Just dumb luck. Does prayer work? Of course not. Is there a soul? Is it immortal? Are you kidding? Is there free will? Not a chance. What happens when we die? Everything pretty much goes on as before except us. What is the difference between right and wrong, good and bad? There's no moral difference between them. Why should I be moral? Because it makes you feel better when you Is abortion, euthanasia, suicide, paying taxes, foreign aid, or anything else you don't like forbidden, permissible, or sometimes obligatory? The answer is anything goes. What is love and how can I find it? Love is the solution to a strategic interaction problem. Does history have any meaning or purpose? It's full of sound and theory but signifies nothing. Does the human past have any lessons for our future? Fewer and fewer, if it never had any to begin with. So that's a pretty pretentious list of persistent questions and simple, short answers. Now, what's interesting about many of the new atheists is they've tried to coat the bitter pill, what they think the bitter pill of atheism, by claiming that you can be an atheist and still endorse the rightness, the correctness, the justification of our ethical beliefs. And this is where I get off the train. It seems to me that if you hold that only science can provide the basis, the justification for what we believe, then you must come to the conclusion that our moral norms are without justification. Sam Harris has just written a new book in which he tries to pull the rabbit of ethics out of the hat of natural science. It can't be done. David Hume showed us why it can't be done in 1737 in the third volume of Virtues of Human Nature, and what he showed then remains true to this day. Consciousness, I say, one of the titles of the chapters is Never Let Your Conscience Be Your Guide. The reason is that consciousness tricks us into many false beliefs, among which the most powerful are the beliefs that get religion started. These beliefs must be understood as mistaken, and once we see their errors, we'll be freed from almost all of the temptations that result in atheists of various kinds falling by the wayside and being trapped by the meretricious allure of religion.
Just like in all human disciplines, Lewis thought that science could be corrupted and that some people could pursue science because they wanted power over the world and power over other people in particular.
And I think what he saw was that you had to avoid those extremes in not only in the employment of science, but in the popularization of it. You could not afford to ignore the finding of science, the importance of scientific method. You had to see that it's one of the greatest applications and developments of the rational method per se, a subset of the rational method. But that it was very dangerous, and that in the 20th century it had had very malignant consequences to deify it. Scientific socialism, credibly a scientific version of politics. The Marxists called their system scientific socialism. Well, no one in his right mind in 2012 will say that Marxism was scientific. No one in his right mind, but people did for 150 years, 170 years. Social Darwinist racial science in Nazi Germany. Enormous prestige was given to racialist views by their apparent clothing. People such as Haeckel and Molschat and Büchner popularizing reductive scientific ideas with immense success. In many ways, more success in Germany than in England. Lewis saw these developments. He saw that 2 world wars, in which one he served and was badly wounded, had roots in barbaric and hysterical scientistic ideas, abuses of the scientific method, abuses of scientific terminology and language, abuses of scientific faith.
About the abuse of science, Lewis made an unusual comparison. Although most people think of science as something modern, Lewis compared it to something ancient, magic.
C.S. Lewis thought that science and magic are twins. Now, if you think about this, this might seem very strange, but I think that Lewis was very perceptive here. But how does science promote that type of credulous or gullible thinking? Lewis pointed out that in the modern world, people will believe almost anything if it's dressed up in the name of science.
He's going to be all right.
Of course he's going to be all right. Oh, sure, Mom. The doc here just wants to cut a little of the badness out of me.
Before the police finally caught up with him, Peter took about 30 cars. A car had meaning to him. In a symbolic way, it represented his mother. Since he could not get her, he had to have a substitute. And a car was that substitute. Hence his thrill every time he drove a car. Hence his continuous stealing. To the average reader, such an explanation may seem far-fetched, yet clinical experience shows that a car often stands for a woman. In daily language, we often call a car she. When we have the tank filled with gasoline, we say, fill her up.
That if you actually take Freud's view to its eventual conclusion, that actually undermines even the belief in Freudianism.
Suppose you had a Freud, somebody kind of like Freud, and this person who is kind of like Freud said, no one ever believes anything for a reason because there's always some other explanation for why they believe it, other than their reason for believing it. Well, that would be true of religious people, but it would also be true of Freud, right? Freud himself.
Lewis's point is, where does this end? If you really think that all reasoning fundamentally is based on sub-rational urges and that we can't analyze those urges and there isn't real reason that we can judge based on evidence, and that we can't be self-critical, then that destroys Freudianism just like it destroys everything else.
saying that our first product enhances the flavor of food. It's called the Flavor Pulp, and it is really stupid. But let's see if we can get people to believe in it. Hi, what's your name?
Larry.
Larry Trevor, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Larry, have you ever been driving down the road and been a little tired and needed to sort of slap yourself to stay awake?
Sure.
So what we've done is we've created a device that actually smacks the flavor up. By jostling the food, we actually awaken the molecules that are responsible for flavor in the food, and it makes it taste better for a couple of minutes. Pretty amazing, huh?
Yeah.
Would you like to see it?
I sure would.
Okay. Okay, Larry, this is the Flavor Pulp. What I have here is a ham sandwich. Would you mind taking a bite of it?
Sure.
Now, how does that taste? Pretty good. Pretty good? Mm-hmm. I'll load the sandwich into the Flavor Pulp bowl, and then I just turn this on, and now try a bite of it. Now, how about that?
Wow. Unbelievable the difference.
Yeah? How would you describe the difference between this bite and the first bite that you had?
This one's just a higher level of flavor. It's, I can taste each individual thing in there a little bit better than I could before.
Yeah. It's amazing.
It truly is.
Now, would you recommend this to your family or friends?
Of course.
There we are. Wow, look, we got one to stick.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
It's really smooth. I can taste the flavor more. It feels really good. It tastes better than the first time.
Great.
Way better.
Awesome. So here I have a bowl of Jell-O.
Pretty much like Jell-O.
Tastes pretty much like Jell-O?
Yeah.
Okay.
Delicious.
Yeah.
Stronger. Maybe a little more sugary.
Yeah. Would you recommend this to your family and friends?
Absolutely.
Yeah. This product is called the Blow and Grow. It's just some Mylar that I've attached to a tube. Has no function whatsoever. Nobody's going to believe in this thing, right? Carbon dioxide is one of the elements that stimulates hair growth, and it actually makes the follicles grow the hair. And what they found is that your own carbon dioxide, the carbon dioxide that you generate, is perfectly pH balanced for your own body. We've invented a device that can use your own breath to grow your own hair. Sounds pretty cool. It is pretty cool. Want to try it? Okay, so this is the Blow and Grow. Now, when I tell you to, breathe into the tubes, and your own carbon dioxide is going to trigger a mechanism that's going to circulate your own breath around your follicles so that they grow. Ready? Okay, give it a try. Now breathe in. Now breathe out. Now breathe in. Can you feel the pull on your hair? So as you can see, it's completely portable. Now take a look at your hairline and tell us what you think. Looks pretty good. You can see that they're a little longer.
Yeah, I think it looks a little thicker, a little longer.
It's amazing, right?
Yeah. The Blow and Grow. Blow yourself a healthy head of hair.
We're calling this product the Flavor app. Now, it's just a regular iPad and 2 golf tees that we stuck into a charger. It obviously doesn't do anything. I mean, obviously. But it's not what we told these people. Protons and electrons are what's actually responsible for the flavor and taste of food. When they're active, something will taste sweeter, and then when they've been dormant, it tastes more dull. And what we've done is we have invented the Flavor app.
Okay,
now
that's something different.
Yeah, you actually download the flavor. How does that sound?
That sounds pretty cool. So it actually works within the sandwich somehow.
And it jolts the protons and electrons in the food, and it gives them a short-term increased in volatility.
Wakes everything up again.
You stick the prongs in here, and I'm going to take the taste bar, move that up to maximize taste. Then I'm going to take the sweetness. We'll go ahead and we'll move that up. When we go to the tartness, let's go ahead and move that up as well. It's actually going to download the flavor. You can see everything's going down. And then it'll tell you when it's ready. Ready? Now try it. Ready? How does that taste?
Stronger.
Describe the difference between this bite and the bite before you use the app.
You can actually taste each part of the sandwich a little bit more.
Yeah, you can almost taste the protons and electrons bouncing around it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's quite amazing.
Yeah, would you recommend this to your friends and family?
Sure.
Take a slice of pizza. Now, how does that taste?
Like greasy pizza?
Like greasy pizza. Okay. Then it's sending, it's downloading the taste into the food. You can see the buttons go down. Does the sauce taste more tart?
Actually, it does.
It does?
I mean, hypnotizing me. Tasting it a little different. I think it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pretty amazing.
What we've done is we've designed a device that you can just wear for a couple hours a day, and it will give you full, sexy lips without any surgery.
Wow.
Want to give it a shot?
Yeah, definitely.
Abby, you are wearing the Lipolizer, and this is 3 clamps, one that has a weight on it, so it pulls your bottom lip down, and then we have 2 clamps here that are attached to a tightening band in the back, so it pulls your top lips up. Can you feel the kind of the pulling?
Yeah, a lot.
Okay, good. Does it feel like your lips are getting fuller?
Yeah, they feel even more tingly, so I think that means there's more blood, right?
Yeah, there's probably blood rushing to your lips,
Yeah.
which helps it feel plumper, probably.
Yeah.
What do you think is the reason that teeth get yellow and old looking?
Probably coffee and
Coffee.
soda.
Coffee and soda?
Yeah.
Actually, because of lack of oxygen.
Oh.
So what we've done is we've developed a machine that will use the oxygen that's naturally around you and take that oxygen and oxidize the enamel in your teeth. Just by using this product for a couple of seconds every day, you will see a noticeable difference in the degree of whiteness in your teeth.
That's good.
We found that 7 is usually the best setting. You ready? All right. How does that feel?
Oh, it feels weird.
It feels weird?
Yeah.
Can you describe the way your teeth feel right now?
They feel clean.
Your teeth feel clean?
Yeah.
See if you can notice any difference.
Oh yeah, I do notice a big difference.
You notice a big difference?
Uh-huh.
Just from a couple seconds?
Yeah.
Wow, isn't that
It is amazing.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna give you the blast of oxygen. Do your teeth feel any different?
Fresh. It's like I just got them cleaned, like at the dentist.
Really? So you
Yeah.
feel that just with a couple of seconds of that?
Yeah.
You feel that they feel fresh?
And like minty kind of too.
Really? Because
Yeah.
it's just oxygen. But you feel like a minty.
Yeah. Like I just got them cleaned.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. See if you can see any difference.
Oh, I do. It like gives them like a glossy, whiter look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing, right?
It works.
For
Yeah.
just a couple of seconds.
That's really cool.
It's tingly.
Do you see any difference at all from earlier?
They're definitely whiter.
You are wearing the Slap and Step. I'm going to turn it on, okay? Here we go. Whoa, there you go. You see how it's firming and toning your butt area? So now do you just want to walk around a little bit? Is this something that you could see yourself using in your day-to-day life?
Doing chores.
Okay, so you just strap this on and stay at home?
Yeah.
Yeah. How does your butt feel?
It feels harder. In a way, like it got toned up from not doing anything, just walking around.
All of us have heard a great many negative speculations about the possible hazard of tobacco smoke in the air. The time had come to put some information from some real medical and scientific experts on the record to help the Congress and the public in their final judgments.
My name is Dr. Kenneth Moser.
My name is Norman Heimstra.
I'm Dr. Suzanne B. Noble of Indianapolis, Indiana.
Americans are in the grip of a new disease, a very serious disease. 2 diseases, as a matter of fact. The disease I'm referring to is usually transmitted by misdirected efforts, so-called consumer advocates, certain books, newspaper headlines, and so forth. The diseases I'm speaking about are smoke-aphobia and cancerophobia.
Smoking is, after all, a ritual that welcomes strangers, provides companionship in solitude, fills empty time, marks the significance of certain kinds of occasions, and expresses individual identity and personal style.
The data are not there. Now, I am not the one to say that if you want to make an emotional judgment on an issue, that it's not one's prerogative, but at least you ought to tell people that that is what you are doing.
Others must provide data, and what we need is good scientific data before I'm willing to accept and submit to the proposition that smoking is a hazard.
Lewis's concern about authoritarian science seems eerily prophetic.
sir or madam, now will you be kind enough to justify your existence? If you can't justify your existence, if you're not pulling your weight in the social vote, if you're not producing as much as you consume, or perhaps a little more, then clearly we cannot use the big organization of our society for the purpose of keeping you alive, because your life does not benefit us and it can't be of very much use to yourself.
Appeal to the chemists to discover a humane gas that will kill instantly and painlessly. Deadly by all means, but humane, not cruel. After 10 years, such gas will be discovered. It will be called Zyklon B. The man who oversaw its practical application, Adolf Eichmann, will later testify that thanks to Zyklon B, people in Auschwitz died without pain. Zyklon B was a humane gas. Yes, Eichmann will use the very same words.
We have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate, has goose-stepped us into misery and bloodshed. We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. Our knowledge has made us cynical, our cleverness hard and unkind. We think too much, feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness and gentleness. Without these qualities, life will be violent, and all will be lost. The aeroplane and the radio have brought us closer together. The very nature of these inventions cries out for the goodness in men, cries out for universal brotherhood, for the unity of us all. Even now, my voice is reaching millions throughout the world, millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people. To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress.
If he only had the new Encyclopedia Britannica at home, he wouldn't have to go through all this. He could be learning right now about science, art, nature, medicine, from the Ice Age to the Space Age, all the latest information on every subject. The new Encyclopedia Britannica. It's your key to the information age and the greatest learning tool available to your family. But they can't use it if they can't get to it.
Oh, darn it! What am I gonna do?
This is an ABC News special report.
To update you on the situation, if you're just now joining us, at least 14 dead, 50 injured. A lot of those injuries are severe after a lone gunman opens fire.
You see images like that, and you can hear the panic, you can hear the chaos, you can see kind of the folks scrambling to get out of what must have been a horrible scene, and it just brings back these memories of Columbine. It brings back memories of Virginia Tech, these other mass shootings that the country has seen in recent years, and just makes you again, as always, wonder what could have been the motivation. Who was this guy? Why would he do this?
And then this unfolds. The why, we don't know.
Oh, darn it! What am I gonna
officers arrive at a Nazi institution seized by First Army troops. Under the guise of an insane asylum, this has been the headquarters for the systematic murder of 35,000 Poles, Russians, and Germans sent here mainly for political and religious considerations. Those still alive are examined by Major Hermann Bolker of the American War Crimes Investigation Team. The townspeople in Hadamar, Germany, call this place the
let me
House
begin
of
with you. Let me
Shadows.
just see if I can correctly summarize the premise of your book. You say that faith in God is inherently irrational, and it results in conflict and war, and in this day of weapons of mass destruction, religious faith should no longer be tolerated by reasonable people. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, that's a very good start, actually.
Okay, great. So if I accuse you of religious intolerance, you would take that as a compliment?
Yeah, I'm arguing for a certain kind of intolerance. There's no way around that.
Graveyard attached to the institution, bodies are exhumed for autopsy. 20,000 are buried here. 15,000 who died in a lethal gas chamber were cremated and their ashes interred. Death books found hidden in the wine cellar of the Hadamar Institution revealed part of the story of the mass killings. The bulky volumes contained thousands of death certificates. Profession unknown, nationality unknown was written after each name. The corpses are lined up pending the arrival of WCIT officers. Major Bolker performs the autopsy. A detailed listing is made of all clinical data.
Sam, in your book, The End of Faith, you say, some propositions are so dangerous that it may even be ethical to kill people for believing them. Certain beliefs place their adherents beyond the reach of every peaceful means of persuasion. Now, does that mean you would try to eliminate the violence associated with faith by using violence against people of faith?
Interrogating the institution heads. Dr. Wallmann, the taller man, was the top Nazi in charge of the place. The other man entering the room is Carl Willig, chief male nurse. He admits to killing inmates with overdoses of morphine. The testimony of other witnesses substantiated the fact that morphine was issued at the institution without attempt at making a record. As many as 17 at a time died from the morphine injections. The investigating officers were told that the Nazis never bothered to determine whether a victim may have survived the overdosage. Instead, all were hustled off to the graveyard and buried in piles of 20 to 24.
In December of 2005, a fairly innocuous open editorial article appeared in the New York Times by animal psychologist Clive Wynne, commenting on ape-human crossbreeding experiments conducted in Russia in the 1920s. Kirill Rosanov is a science historian with the Russian Academy of Sciences in Moscow. In 2002, he says that he uncovered documents revealing that in 1925, Stalin approved a $10,000 grant to a Russian scientist, equivalent to approximately $120,000 today.
The Russian scientist named Ilya Ivanovich Ivanov undertook a very strange experiment. Actually, he went to Africa in order to carry out the artificial insemination of chimpanzee females with human sperm.
He artificially inseminated 3 chimpanzees over the course of a year. The efforts proved to be futile.
On the one hand, he didn't get the hybrids, the viable hybrids. On the other hand, he couldn't exclude the possibility of success, because 3 inseminations, it was too little. Chances for success were rather low.
After several attempts and no pregnancies, Ivanov's strategy took a drastic turn. He wanted to inseminate Soviet women with ape sperm. So when the chimps failed to become pregnant, he arranged for the artificial insemination of women volunteers with the sperm of Tarzan, the orangutan male.
But it is interesting that there are so many scientists who supported the experiments, even, the experiments on the insemination of women. The motivation of women who would decide voluntarily to take part in the experiments should be scientific in a sense. They should feel, understand that they help science.
It was difficult to find such women, but in 1928, a volunteer came to him. She was a woman from Leningrad, cited only as G.
Dear Professor, with my private life in ruins, I don't see any sense in my further existence. But when I think that I could do a service for science, I feel enough courage to contact you. I beg you, don't refuse me. I ask you to accept me for the experiment.
So Ivanov moved forward to inseminate woman G with orangutan sperm. At the same time, devastating forces in Russia conspired against him. Ilya Ivanov's attempts to inseminate chimps with human sperm were unsuccessful. Then in 1929, before he could inseminate a Russian woman with orangutan sperm, his plan was derailed when the donor orangutan, Tarzan, died. And for Ivanov, the historic window of opportunity was closing, and Ivanov's experiments were never completed. True to his capricious and opportunistic nature, Stalin by this time had eliminated all of the old-school Bolsheviks, including many prominent scientists. He was on his path of destruction, and what of Ivanov?
And Ivanov was arrested and put into jail.
They were now considered old specialists, and were vulnerable to repression and political criticism. 1 year later, in 1932, Ivanov died of a stroke. His personal quest was over. What were Ivanov's real intentions then? Ivanov's records reveal that the intended reason for the experiments was not to create a super warrior after all, but rather to discredit the church by supporting evolution over religious beliefs.
Ivanov expected that these experiments would be a huge step towards establishing the exact human genealogy, and should be used in anti-religious propaganda, and should be used in anti-religious propaganda, and should be used in anti-religious propaganda.
Very similar genetically, the different number of chromosomes in chimps and humans presents problems.
If a human ape hybrid were to be produced, I think it would be severely malformed and profoundly retarded. I think you would just get a huge mess. So I would expect this offspring to either not live very long or not even make it to birth.
Stalin now controlled every form of information. History books were rewritten. Newspapers claimed falsely that Soviet scientists had invented everything from the telegraph to radio, from the light bulb to penicillin. Stalin's great terror forced doubters to stay silent. Anyone who deviated from the party line could be put on trial as a spy.
Когда вот так вот исчез мой брат, его арестовали.
My brother was arrested in the office of Pravda newspaper, where he was an editor, and he disappeared. I realized what was going on, and prepared myself for my own arrest, since I was as guilty as him.
Виновен, как и мой брат.
Boris Yefimov watched his own brothers show trial.
Под руководством партии Ленина-Сталина в нашей стране окончательно уничтожена эксплуатация человека человеком.
Indicted as an enemy of the people, Mikhail was found guilty of crimes against the state and shot. As millions died in Stalin's purges, the most fanatical party members suddenly became non-persons. Enemies of the state were airbrushed from the pages of history.
When people would be taken away and shot, there would be new circulars sent to all libraries, to all schools and everywhere, that they had to cut out a page from the Great Soviet Encyclopedia and put another page in, which was sent to them, specially printed. And so when Trotsky disappeared, young people who didn't know better would ask, Trotsky, who? They would say, don't talk about it, don't talk about it. Nobody, not important. That's how it was.
This wholesale censorship gave Stalin's government a monopoly on every form of information. A relentless stream of Kremlin propaganda reached into every home.
Every house, every flat had to have a radio on the wall, which was wired into a special socket. It was mostly silent, but then 1-2 times a day it would start crackling, and then some voice would say, "From Soviet Inform Bureau." It was really like Orwell, like Big Brother talking to you, telling you what you should know.
Wired network always told you about the achievements in every walk of life, achievements around, and of course very negative information about the outside world.
By 1950, Stalin had achieved a truly totalitarian state. From womb to tomb, every Soviet citizen was drilled in the party line.
In a world driven by science and technology, those who question the new order, like C.S. Lewis did, increasingly find themselves labeled anti-science. C.S. Lewis would have rejected the charge.
Lewis did not accept the idea that science was a special form of knowledge that was somehow immune to inspection, that was somehow cordoned off from the non-specialist assessing the deliverances of the sciences. Lewis was well aware that, first of all, that there's no such thing as science as such. There are sciences, and each science has its particular methods and its particular areas of study. And also that the sciences, to be good, need to interact with one another, but they do so by means of the larger tools of good, rational, critical thinking. And so that the things that the scientists say are subject to review by everyone who is able to think well, to think critically, to think rationally.
Lewis did not deny that scientific expertise might be necessary for good public policy in many areas, but he insisted that science alone was not sufficient.
Knowing, say, how things work, knowing how cells work, or knowing how ecosystems work, doesn't tell you what you ought to do for your society. Because public policy is not just about the technical expertise of how things work. It's about what good is worth having at what price. And as C.S. Lewis pointed out, on these questions, a scientific training gives you no added value. Scientists are not moral philosophers, yet political and social judgments involve not just how do things work and how can we make them work better, but how should we act, and what's worth spending money on, and what's worth doing, and what freedoms are worth giving up or not. And on these sorts of moral and ethical questions, someone's science training doesn't give them the right to dictate to the rest of society. C.S. Lewis thought that science was a good thing, but he also thought that it held some really strong dangers. The biggest danger really was the penchant to control. In a scientific view, if you think that is the only way that we have knowledge of the world, and so if you think that if I have the scientific truth about something, that's, end of story, I know everything, that really tends to feed a power trip. Whether you're a scientist or you're a politician who's trying to latch on to the prestige of science, you really have people who are going to abuse their power because they think, look, we're the only ones who know what should happen because we know how the universe really works. Therefore, we should be able to dictate what our cultural beliefs are. We should dictate what our government should do, how we should design governmental programs. We should dictate all manner of public policy, and that anyone who doesn't have a scientific training or isn't part of the consensus view of science is basically stupid or against progress or against science, and so should be really swept by the wayside and shouldn't be listened to. And I think Lewis thought that that almost totalitarian impulse was really a dangerous thing.
It's an age-old problem. How do we prevent something good from being twisted for evil ends? C.S. Lewis hoped that scientists themselves would find a way to rescue science from scientism, creating a regenerate science that respected human rights and honored human dignity, a science that would no longer be the magician's twin.
This is the philosophy that I spoke of that dominated the 1930s and the 40s and that has now collapsed among philosophers. Scientism is a theory of knowledge. It's not science, it's a theory of knowledge. And what it says is that science, physical science, is the only source of knowledge. So that if something cannot be scientifically proven, it's irrational to believe in it. You should only believe what can be scientifically proven. Now, this is the philosophy that I spoke of that dominated the 1930s and the 40s and that has now collapsed among philosophers who know better. Why? Well, first of all, this is far too narrow a theory of knowledge to be adequate. There are vast ranges of truth that we know and believe and are rational in believing, but that cannot be scientifically proven. For example, logic and mathematics are presupposed by science, not proven by science. Truths of ethics, like what is good or evil, cannot be scientifically established. Truths of aesthetics, the beautiful, like the good, is also not accessible scientifically. Metaphysical truths, like the existence of the external world or the reality of the past, cannot be scientifically proven. These are metaphysical assumptions. Finally, even science itself, ironically, science is permeated by unprovable assumptions, so that if you only believe what could be scientifically proven, you would destroy science. Just one example. In the special theory of relativity, it is assumed that the one-way velocity of light in space from point A to point B is constant. But we can't prove that. All we can measure is the round-trip velocity of light from A to B and back to A again. It could go out at one rate and come back at another. We just have to presuppose or assume that the one-way velocity is constant, but it can't be scientifically proven. So this theory of knowledge is far too narrow to be adequate. But the really crushing criticism, Andrew, was the realization that this theory is self-refuting. Just ask yourself, is the statement, you should only believe what can be scientifically proven, is that statement scientifically provable? Well, no, it's just an arbitrary definition, and it's not even a very good one. So that if you only believed what can be scientifically proven, you should never believe that you should only believe what can be scientifically proven. It's self-refuting. And that's why among philosophers, this theory of knowledge is virtually, universally abandoned. And it's sad to see certain people educated in the earlier era of the 20th century who are still holding on to this. People like Lawrence Krauss, for example, who are scientistic. But you can confidently reject that when your mates tell you that if something can't be proven by science, then it's irrational to believe it.
Aim is to propagandize. That obviously is the best seduction technique.
This nation has placed its destiny in the hands and heads and hearts of its millions of free men and women, and its faith in freedom under the guidance of God. Freedom means the supremacy of human rights everywhere. Our support goes to those who struggle to gain those rights and keep them. Our strength is our unity of purpose. To that high concept, there can be no end save victory.